Hello, my name is Maria Jolicoeur. Welcome to my show, Let's Talk About History. Today, my guest is Dale Plummer, Norwich's historian. And recently, Dale went to visit Kansas City in Missouri, and he went to see the World War I National Museum and Memorial, and we're going to be discussing his trip and about World War I. I'd like for you to see a video right here about the World War I Memorial and Museum in Kansas City, Missouri.
The Liberty Memorial stretches into the sky above the busy streets of Kansas City, Missouri. But what lies underneath it is arguably even more fascinating.
In 1921, at the groundbreaking, the Vice President of the United States was here to dedicate the memorial, as well as the 5 Allied generals, which was the first time in history that they were together. The museum opened in 1926, and its mission really always stayed focused to telling that story of World War I.
At the National World War I Museum, rifles line the wall, bunkers come to life, and a proud history begins to take shape.
The museum really shares the very personal stories of the men and women who sacrificed throughout the war, and it's really told not only from the American perspective, but through all nations who were participants in the war. There are large weapons like you would expect, but there's also a lot of personal items and objects of the common soldier. So what they carried in their pocket, it might be dice or a rosary or a Bible or a lot of personal photos of people.
This museum is so much more than just a collection of knowledge and military gear, though.
We've really integrated technology. So you have interactive tables where you can create your own propaganda poster or a memorial and email it to yourself. You use this light pen and you can learn about weapons of the time and tanks and camouflage and a lot of the things. It's a great hands-on way for kids of all ages to learn.
The National World War I Museum is a place to remember the past, to marvel at the technology of a century that is all too often forgotten. A place where nations come together, a place to remember the tragedies of war and of those who sacrificed their lives for us.
There are so many communities that have wonderful art museums and zoos and terrific things. The reality, this is America's only museum dedicated to the Great War. We have the largest collection of World War I artifacts in the country, one of the largest in the world, and it's told in a way that is very meaningful and relevant, and it is truly a national treasure that everyone should come and experience.
Link. This previous video that just played is on YouTube, and it's from Insider Perks, and I want to give you the link real quick in case you would like to see the video yourself. The link number is 9 capital JUB capital K capital E capital F L G $SH equals capital K capital V Y capital S A capital N EIT capital V underscore NW capital RO. Insider Perks on YouTube, so you can see that anytime. Dale, I'd like to know how did World War I start, and which countries were involved in the war?
Well, World War I, at least ostensibly, started because of the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand and his wife in Belgrade in 1914, in June of 1914. And it ended up with Austria declaring war on Serbia, Russia declaring war on Austria, the Germans declaring war on the Russians, and the French came in because they had an alliance, and then the British. So we're still trying as historians to understand exactly why it happened. There are many different views, but the major nations involved were on the Allied side: Britain, France, Italy, which came in a little bit later, Those were your major ones, and of course the United States comes in later. On the Central Powers side, you had Germany, or the German Empire, you had Austria, Hungary, and you had Russia. But beyond that, both the French and the British had enormous colonial possessions throughout the world. So they recruited, or in some cases forced, troops from those possessions to fight in Europe on the Western Front. So you had Vietnamese troops, you had African troops,
Wow.
Indian troops, West Indian, just almost every country was involved in one way or another.
How long did the war last?
Excuse me?
How long did the war last?
Well, it lasted over 4 years. It started in August of 1914 and it ended on November 11th, 1918. My birthday, November 11th.
Oh, gee.
But not
It's
1918.
next month. Happy birthday ahead of time. Wow. So, how did World War I end? What created the peace?
I think really the deciding factor was the entry of the United States into the war. The two sides, the Central Powers and the Allies, were almost evenly matched. And every time one of them had an advance, the other one took countermeasures or developed similar tactics and techniques. So, for instance, aerial warfare evolved very quickly in the war.
Aerial? And the plane had just been invented.
Exactly.
recently.
Only a few years before,
Wow.
and yet they developed it into a pretty formidable weapon of war.
Yeah.
Giant 600-foot Zeppelins were used by the Germans to drop bombs on London, the start of aerial bombardment. Submarines came into their own as a weapon of war, and the Germans used them very effectively. And it was submarine warfare that drove the United States into the war, along with some other missteps by Germany. So I think the Germans realized, with the U.S. sending millions of men, fresh troops, that it was hopeless. And so they signed.
They knew. Yeah.
Yes, they signed the armistice on November 11th, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month.
Wow.
But people were still killing each other right up
Armistice.
until the
So
last minute.
That's on Veterans Day.
And that is, Veterans Day was in fact originally called Armistice Day,
Oh, okay.
and then it was changed to Veterans Day in the 1950s.
Oh, okay. How many American lives were lost in World War I?
About 116,000.
Oh, my
About
goodness.
half that was from direct combat, most of which was artillery shells. The other half was disease and illness.
Okay.
The influenza, the flu pandemic
Oh, right.
started, and it spread quickly because of the war. When you have thousands of men crammed into ships, in barracks, in trenches, with all the stress and so forth.
Disease. And
Exactly, it spread very rapidly.
uncleanliness.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
terrible.
So they pick up the germs. That's how it spreads. The disease spreads.
Yes. The total casualties, they're not even sure. Among the military, 8 to 10 million.
Oh, altogether, the Allies and
The Germans. And
wow.
yes, and then hundreds of thousands of people maimed for life.
Civilians. Oh.
And of course, you had the shell shock victims, which they didn't really understand at the time. So it was really a
Devastation.
terrible war.
Devastating. Must have been total devastation. I
Yes.
mean, in the countries,
Yes, the parts of France that the Germans occupied and where the fighting took place were just ripped apart. Whole villages destroyed.
Yeah.
Well, we're seeing the same kind of thing in Ukraine today,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And trench warfare is happening in Ukraine.
See, the thing is that you say, well, Ukraine is not that big of a country, but I think if Russia wants to gain control of Ukraine, they would want to go further and further and further, gain more control over other
Right.
lands, territory.
That's one of the powerful
That's why
arguments.
should we step in with our allies and stop it before they try to gain more control. But I think America is smart. They're seeing exactly what it's going to consist of.
Well, yes, and we're trying
Because
to.
China and Russia Russia was asking for help from China, and they're a big country.
It's a very
we
delicate.
really want to go against China.
They're a very delicate situation,
Yeah.
and it has a lot of parallels.
Yeah. So we're taking our time and just.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. But I mean, when it comes to how much we're going to help out with
Yes.
Ukraine.
And that was a question in the First World War. Which side would we enter? A lot of Americans didn't want to enter the war at all. And really, it was with great reluctance that we finally entered it on April 6, 1917. So we were only in the war for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
We managed to raise an army of 4 million men. I mean, it was a stupendous effort.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Well, Germany has also been on the side of Ukraine, has offered help.
Yes.
So at least they're on our side this time, allies. Okay. On your visit to the National World War I Museum and Memorial, what did you find very interesting there that kind of stands out in your mind, your visit there?
I guess one of the things I found was the staff were so friendly, so helpful, and they had volunteers in each exhibit that could answer questions and kind of guide you around.
Mm-hmm.
So the people there were fantastic.
Oh, that's nice. That makes you feel more comfortable.
It does.
Yeah.
And you entered the museum proper over a bridge, sort of a glass bridge with all these thousands of artificial poppies underneath it, to give you an idea of the numbers of people, Americans that died in the war.
Wow.
But it was also good. The main reason I went there was to see an exhibit called War Remains. It's an interactive exhibit where you actually put on a helmet, earphones, and you walk into a simulated trench, and it is exactly as if you were there.
Oh my.
With exploding
Yeah.
shells, tanks.
And that experience, the soldiers have to take home with them. They
Right.
can't just leave it there as soon as they come home. It stays with them
Exactly.
because, a lot of young soldiers, if there's a war and, there's a draft and they have to go to war, some of them are very Christian and don't believe in killing. And when they're put in that position, they have to go against their faith.
Yes, I
know,
think that's
and,
true. It's true.
That's why we pray for peace,
Yes.
because war is only about killing. So every soldier is somebody's son, brother, or father, and they're loved by somebody. So
Yes.
war is only about killing, and
On
hopefully.
all sides. And of course, the other thing is that because they had such
That's what my dad said. He said when he goes to church, he prays for peace because he was in World War II, and
right, as
you
was
know.
mine, yes.
yeah,
So,
they were young. It was a draft. They had to go to war.
yes. And, you're right. You're right. And I think one of the things is that when you have guns that have ranges in the miles, when you fire a shot, you don't see the result of it. You don't see the mangled bodies, the destruction that that is wrought by it. So you have that disconnect between your action. It's the same thing today with drones and so forth. You know, you're disconnected.
I mean, when we see what's going on in Ukraine, you know, the innocent lives and the children, so sad.
Terrible.
You know, we can't help but want to step in and help stop the fighting that's going on there.
Exactly. And of course, you know, one of our local doctors, Dr. Ira J. Manwaring, worked in France in a hospital with French civilians who were refugees, you know, driven out of their villages and homes and farms. So she actually worked with the French and received one of the highest medals that France had to offer as a reward for her service. France was very grateful.
In World War I or World War II?
World War I.
Oh, wow.
France was very grateful to us.
Yeah.
All the men who died in World War I from this area and elsewhere through the U.S., their families were given certificates, beautiful certificates by the French government. They would have them all gather, and they would
for thanks for their service
and their sacrifice as families.
All right, there is an upcoming event. There's a photo up here of World War I, the Forgotten War.
Yes.
Please tell the viewers about this event coming up.
Well, this is really exciting. This Thursday, Diane Romanowski, who grew up here and went to NFA, is going to talk about how to research soldiers who were in World War I. There's a lot of material, and she has researched her great uncle, Vladimir Zabolinsky. She researched him, and in doing that, she learned how to use the resources. So he's going to do a workshop on this Thursday, the 5th of October at 7 at the Parlor of Park Congregational Church. And anyone who wants to can attend. There's a voluntary donation towards the restoration of our World War I howitzer, but if you know, that's totally voluntary. So it should be a great thing. You know, and poor Vladislav, he had a wife, 2 young daughters. I think they were 5 and 6 years old. He died. He was killed by an exploding shell on November 7th, and the peace came on November 11th. So only 4 days before the end of the war, leaving a widow and 2 children. You know.
Okay, and there's another event the viewers might be interested in attending. There's a photo of that we can put up. Is Vladislav Slavinsky, a memorial tree dedication at Three Rivers Communities College. Please tell us, Dale, about the dedication and who it is for.
Sure. For the last 3 years, we've been raising from acorns, from descendants of the charter oak, little oak trees. And we are going to be planting those in memory of World War I soldiers that died. This is one of our first ones. Okay. Vladislav was actually the subject of Diane Romanowski's research, and we're dedicating this tree. The charter oak is a symbol of Connecticut, it's a symbol of peace, it's a symbol of our government and civil liberties, self-government. So we think it's important and very symbolic. It's going to be at 11 at the Agricultural Extension Service on the Three Rivers grounds. I'm hoping to get up some markers to point the way. And this is a little photograph that appeared. They put out photos of those who had died from the various states. And Vladislav is in the Connecticut section. But, it's really...
Well, to keep his memory alive.
Exactly.
And his sacrifice for his country.
And you know, the thing is, yes,
show to honor him.
and this will be a living memorial.
Mm-hmm.
It should live for hundreds of years and keep his memory alive at the same
Exactly.
time.
Okay, please tell me about the Charter Oak
Oh, yes. Yeah.
tree, Charter Oak tree descendants, and how groups can get involved.
Ah, okay. The Charter Oak, of course, is a famous tree in
Is
Connecticut.
that the one that was so big?
It's huge.
Yeah, people, there was a group of people, there was a picture of that years ago, I think during the bicentennial of the country, and there was a picture of people gathered around holding hands of the Charter Oak tree, and it was a group of maybe about 15 people.
There is an estimate that it might have been 1,000 years old. But
Oh, wow.
it was important to the local Indians in Hartford. They begged the settlers not to touch the tree, to leave it alone, which they respected. And when Governor Andros tried to seize Connecticut's charter and, you know, turn Connecticut over to the control of the king, the legend is that they had the charter in a room. In the evening, the candles blew out and the charter disappeared. And it was supposed to have been hidden in the hollow tree. The part of the trunk was hollow. So that has become a sort of a foundational legend of Connecticut.
Oh.
The tree blew down in a hurricane in August 21st, 1856. They had a funeral for it.
Oh, 1856. All right, this must have been an old picture then of the group of people
Yes.
encircling the tree.
Well, it was very important. So what we're doing is we're groups that want to, or families that want to remember one of these World War I soldiers can sponsor a tree. So they would contact me at the city historian's email is the best.
And you also have, if a group wants to donate and fund for the tree, these saplings he has planted in different areas in Norwich, and they're growing and they can be planted in the spring.
Yes.
If you notice in the green, there's some growing on the Chelsea Parade, and there's some growing at the Congregational Church by NFA in the back.
That's right.
But the groups, Chelsea Bank is funding,
Well, we're
Discussing it.
we're discussing it with them.
Okay.
We haven't.
but you can fund it. You can fund a tree, a
Yes.
group.
Or, in
Or
this case,
Charter
the Zablinski family has sponsored this tree in honor of Vladislav.
Oh, wonderful.
So
Great.
it's very good. If they want to contact me, the best thing is at norwichcityhistorian@gmail.com. All
Right.
run together.
Okay, well, Dale, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you.
And it was very interesting. I learned a lot. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my show. Thank you.